Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Thanks for tuning in. One thing I realised recently, looking through all the videos I've made over the last 5 years, is that nearly all my videos have been about video. I've done a few computers over the years and a few digital cameras, but it's been mostly video recorders, video cameras. So I thought it was about time I looked at some audio equipment. Got a few things at home that I've collected over the years, some old interesting devices. So today we're going to start off with one of my old radios. It's quite an old one in a wooden case. I think it's from the 1960s. So stay tuned and we'll have a look at that, and I'll see you right after the intro. And here it is, branded Melody, a brand I've actually not heard of before, and it's made in Yugoslavia, so that's probably why. Unfortunately, the front panel of my example here is cracked, and it was actually like this when I got it. I've had it for quite a few years now. I think I bought it about 10 years ago off of eBay. I thought this radio was from around the early 1970s, but it turns out, according to radiomuseum.org, it's from around 1962. And now I look at it, it does look more like it's from the 1960s, with those sleek lines and that design. So looking at the controls on the front here is quite sparse. You've got a tuning dial there on the left, tone knob, and a volume knob, which is also the on-off switch. You pull this out to turn the radio on. And then you have the radio selection buttons there, VHF, which is FM, medium wave, long wave. And then you have an input select button for the auxiliary input on the back for a tape recorder labelled PU. When I was in my early teens, I had quite a lot of old radios, and of course they were already sort of 20 or 30 years old by the time I had them in the late 80s. And one of the things that fascinated me the most was all those different station names and locations around the world. I used to listen to quite a lot of shortwave radio and medium wave and long wave, but these days it's getting harder to listen to because there are not as many stations broadcasting on these frequencies. Listening to these foreign stations was my first experiences with foreign languages, and as a kid it was really fascinating. And at first glance, when I first saw this radio, I actually thought it was stereo, but it turns out when we look inside in a moment, you'll see that it actually has two speakers in there that are joined together. It is actually mono. So let's take a look around at the back. As you can see there, it's got one of those hardboard backs with some ventilation there. Port there for a second speaker, it's got to be 4 ohms. Caution note there to say to unplug it before you take it apart. And you've got your aerial connections there and your tape recorder input labelled PU. And also a little diagram there showing the locations and model numbers of the 4 valves that are inside this radio. So let's open this up, shall we, and have a look inside. Quite a simple affair to get into, just 2 screws on the back there. One was already hanging out. Although I do seem to recall going in this radio before, actually, when I first got it, to put some sellotape over that broken glass panel to stop any bits falling out. So yeah, just 2 screws there to get into the back, and then you're in. And here we go. It's quite packed in there actually, busier than I thought it was going to be. But then it is over 50 years old, isn't it? In fact, it's actually 62 years old. Made in 1962 probably, and it's 62 years old. Wow, it's actually older than I thought. And there's those 2 speakers I mentioned before, bridged together with 2 cables. Let's have a look at one of the vacuum tubes. Come out quite easily actually, sometimes they can be quite stiff if they've been corroded. This one here is a EBF 89, made by Mullard. At first glance I counted around 4 vacuum tubes here, but according to the small diagram there on the back of the radio, there's actually 5, if that is in fact a vacuum tube. The other vacuum tubes are an ECH 81, an ECL 82 and an ECC 85. The other one that's pointing out there is marked as 7V03A. Turns out that other item there located as 7 volt 0.3 amp is actually the light bulb to light up the radio tuning on the front. It makes sense really when you think about it, they mentioned that, because that's a vacuum tube as well. And there's the variable capacitor for tuning the different stations in. These come in all different shapes and sizes actually. Some can be very large and some can be smaller. I think the smaller ones are usually more for fine tuning. Let's have a look in the bottom and see what's going on in there, and see if there's a circuit board, because sometimes these things are just hardwired into the chassis itself. And there you go, this one does have a PCB. It's a very basic one at that. Look at the size of those tracks. you'd have no problems working in that one, would you? In fact, you could probably work in that, or work on that in candlelight. I'm going to remove the chassis from the case in a moment to get those other valves out, just to give them a little wiggle in and out to clean the contacts. But before we do that, let's power this thing up and see if we can see the valves illuminating inside the case. Of course, anything with valves in doesn't come on instantly like transistors or ICs. It has to have a moment to warm up to get to operating temperature. Well, now at the back there I can see the ECC85 lit up. I'll try and have a look at the other three in a moment. And there's the ECH81 and the EBF89. And there's the ECL82 next to the transformer. Okay, let's get the chassis out, shall we, and have a closer look inside. It's one thing I do love about these old radio sets and TV sets even around from the same time period. You can just undo some screws from the bottom there and slide the whole inner workings out to gain access for maintenance and cleaning. I'm not going to pull the entire chassis out because the glass panel is cracked, as I mentioned before, and I didn't want to damage it further. Let's pull the rest of the tubes out and have a closer look at them. I'll also give a brief description of each of these tubes. This is not my own knowledge, I shall get this from Google. There's the little ECC85. This vacuum tube is used in audio preamps and amplified front end stages. Apparently it's very well known for its excellent sound quality and balanced stereo image. Next up is the ECH81, a triode heptode, and was launched in 1954 for the role of frequency changer mixer in super het receivers for AM reception. Then we have the EBF89, which features two signal diodes and a variable pentode in the one envelope and sharing a common cathode. And finally the ECL82, apparently this is a popular triode output pentode enclosed in one envelope and is good for low power amplifiers. Okay, it's time to put this back together now. I was going to use some contact clean on the valves, but I've decided not to, because sometimes it can actually make them come out a bit too easy, and I don't want any of these moving when it's back together if I end up knocking it. I did try the audio input on the back, but unfortunately the output was really low. I had to have the volume on maximum, and of course I can't play any music through the stations because I'll get copyright claimed. There is a bit of a hum on this amplifier, but that's pretty much normal for these. And the audio quality from this is nice and warm, which is what you would expect from a valved amplifier. And there you have it, the Melody wood grain wood veneered radio from the early 1960s. There's something about these old radios, isn't there? I do love the wood grain effect and the warm glow of the tuning display from the incandescent light bulbs. I have a lot of fond memories of listening to radio stations late at night, back when I was a teenager, and listening to all those countries I would never have the chance to visit. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that with me. As I said at the beginning of the video, I've not really done a lot on audio products, but in the future I will be doing more. They're quite interesting. Well, I guess that just leaves me to say, as always, thanks for watching. Until the next video, I'll be seeing you. And if you did enjoy watching this video, you may want to take a look at some of my other videos on similar themes. I'm always buying something on eBay, some more piece of technology, and trying to repair it. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching.